Today's video is mainly going to be focused on the differences between all of the various models of Toshiba Tecra 8000 series laptops. However, before I touch on that subject, I want to touch on another subject. And this particular upcoming piece of drivel is directed at the YouTube developers, who I'm sure are not watching this video, but that doesn't matter. You see this right here? This is where my comments are supposed to be. And as the loading thingy there in the middle will tell you, they aren't loading. This is a bug. Get off your asses, do your jobs, and fix it. Thank you. After that rant, I think we need to take a little bit of a sidetrack, once again, but this time on the more positive side, and this time we're going to have a little bit of an adventure in chocolate orange opening. There are many kinds of surfaces that you can open up a chocolate orange on. Your bed is not one of them. I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin on this. I'm going to open up this chocolate orange on top of a speaker. That's right. This chocolate orange is going to be opened up on top of a speaker. It could break the speaker. It could break the orange. Hopefully, it breaks the orange. Pull that out. Out comes the orange. You can discard the box pretty callously if you want. And then we take the orange that says whack and unwrap, and we break a speaker with it, like this. Let's have one more for good measure. Wrap that up a bit here, and so I think that answers that question. You cannot open your chocolate orange on top of a speaker, at least not a particle board created speaker like this. Oh well. It's all in science, isn't it? Oops. I guess it did put a hole in my speaker cabinet. Oh well, that speaker's a piece of junk anyways. So finally, I'm getting around to making a video comparing all of the Toshiba Tecra 8X00 models. For completeness sake, I am also going to be comparing all three of these to the Toshiba Portage 7020 CT. Ignore the Dell in the background, and also ignore the cat in the background too. It would not be out of place to think of the 8200 as what the 8100 would like to be when it grows up. The Portage is a little bit of a different story. Basically, it is a combination of the 8000 and the 8100, if you take a look at its styling and its overall general design. Now, in terms of general styling, the 8000 is the one that sticks out the most to me. This is the most radically different system out of them all. As you can see, it definitely is the most radically different system of them all, except for probably that Dell over there, but once again, I'm not comparing the Dell with any of these. You'll see that it does not use the shiny metal of the 8100 and the Portage here, and what also looks like shiny metal on the 8200, but more on that in a second. Rather, it is a gray, dull plastic. I'm sure you've also noticed the ribbed design of the 8000, and notice that this is also present in the Portage 7020 CT, as you can see. However, it is not present in the 8100 or the 8200, and you will also see that this second piece here, I mean, I can't call it rubber. Well, I can call it rubber in the case of those three things there, but I can't call it rubber in the case of this. Also does not span the width of the entire laptop on the 8100, 8200, and the Portage, whereas it does on the 8000. The only other difference is the position of the Toshiba logo. It is on the top on the 8000, and it is on or near the middle or the bottom on all of the other Toshiba models. You'll also see that there's a difference with the 7020 CT's logo. It's just basically shiny. I don't think it's quite metal. It might be just a chrome-plated plastic. A lot of you are probably looking at the top of this Tecra 8200 and going, what in the world? That looks shiny. You know, did they polish the metal finish? Well, no, they didn't. This is quite a radical difference from any of Toshiba's other laptops, and highlights a common problem with modern computers. You'll see we've still got the simple rubberized finish here at the back, and it's a silver finish here, and it's also got this rubber on the front, and this is, I believe, rubber. Maybe it is a plastic, I have no idea. But you'll see that it is shiny, and it's also plastic. One of my big gripes about this system is the fact that it is much more cheaply built than its predecessors. And you can tell. It feels lighter, and it looks cheaper. I don't like the look of glossy plastics. And the other reason why I don't like glossy plastics is evidenced right there above the logo. That is what happens all too often. Pay no attention to that white speck that's over there, that black and white whatever speck that's right there. That's a cat hair. This won't come out, or at least you can't get it out easily. After a while, after a lot of use, it just starts looking bad. This is an impeccable example of glossy plastic. This thing must not have been used at all. I have seen some, not necessarily this model, but I have seen some glossy plastics that have been all scratched, and they just look like crap. It was not a good idea to start doing this, but it looks good on a shelf at Best Buy, so that's why it was done. Here is an example of a glossy surface that looks like crap. This is my compact Presario A900, and you can see there are scratches everywhere. And there are also other forms of boo-boos. Maybe the camera, there we go. And there's a big gouge mark right there. That's horrible. That's probably the worst scuff on the entire machine. This is what happens when you have glossy plastics and somebody actually uses the computer. It looks like crap. The front of these laptops is where things get a little bit interesting. When comparing the edges, the front, the sides, and the back, I'm not going to include the Portage back there because the Portage is a sub-notebook and therefore it lacks many of the ports that Tecras have built into them. You'll see that on the Tecra 8000, the battery opens to the left and is on the left side of the laptop. And you will also see that the CD-ROM, or more accurately the selectable bay, is on the front. Also make note of the appearance of the status LEDs and also the case opening latch. Can't forget that also on the right side is a volume knob, a hardware volume knob, and also a hardware reset switch. Remember when laptops had those? Yeah, those were the days, that's for sure. On the right side, we have got the lock for the selectable bay. We've got the lever for ejecting whatever is in the selectable bay. We have the PCMCIA card slots. I believe that is 2 Type 2, 1 Type 3, if I remember my card types right. Installed in there right now, while not really essential to this comparison, is a Zircon credit card Ethernet adapter 2PS, because this does not have any built-in Ethernet. This is only a 10 megabit card, but it is certainly perfectly serviceable. Underneath that is the port for the external floppy drive, if you so desire. Now you could use either of these two, well, I suppose you could probably use more than just these, but these are the two that I happen to have. That's just a bog standard floppy drive, doesn't really match this case, but matches the later ones, but there's more on that coming, of course. And then there's this one, which is much larger, and you can also easily replace in here. I suppose you could probably put the CD-ROM drive in there, but I have no idea if it works. I have heard mixed results from such tests. And of course, an essential part of every laptop from this time period, a telephone modem. On the back, you can see a composite video output, which is a nice feature, although I've never been able to get it to work. Serial, a VGA or 15-pin D-sub, whichever you prefer. A curious blank spot, although that is just a cover, and removing it reveals a dock port. But I leave the cover on because I don't have a dock for this, and I'd rather not lose the cover. Microphone, headphone, and line input connections. We have an infrared, PS2, parallel port, and also port for the power brick, which is a brick on a leash, not the built-in power supply that a lot of other Toshiba laptops have, and that I much prefer because these particular barrel connections have got issues with the connectors breaking free from the motherboard. Rounding out the tour of the edge of this particular machine, we've got the cooling fan, we have a single USB 1.1 port, the power button, and also the slider, common on all Toshibas, and also a couple of other laptops too, to lock out the power button just in case you've got this in a bag or whatever and you don't want it to turn on. And then, of course, you've got the Kensington lock right there. What do you want? What, you want to be in the video? Yeah, now you're in the video. Isn't that nice? The 8100 takes all of that and basically changes it completely. Some things remain the same, but most of them have changed. You will see that the battery is now on the right side and opens up from the right, which makes the batteries for the 8100 not interchangeable with the 8000, so I'd advise that you don't try that. And the hard drive is now underneath here beside the battery. This one's also coming apart because it's missing a screw. You can also see the hardware reset switch right there and the volume knob right there on the other side of the system. And those are the indicator lights. They're still the same indicator lights, but they're in a different position and they look different. On the right side, you will see another design difference, and I actually like this design difference as opposed to what the 8000 does. You'll see one speaker here. There's also another one on the other side. The 8000 has the speakers on the palm rest, which is a much inferior design, mostly because dirt can much more easily get into the speakers when they're on the palm rest because your hands are most of the time over top of them. They also sound better when they're on the side because you're not covering up the speaker, although these speakers are probably not as good as they could be. This is a metal grill though, so that's definitely props to Toshiba on that one. You have the selectable bay here, and you'll also notice something missing. There's no selectable bay lock, and there's no eject lever. That's because this has all been done away with, and it just uses a slide switch on the bottom right there. You'll also see the telephone modem, still no built-in Ethernet on this unit, and another design departure, one that I'm not so fond of. They require you to use a breakout cable in order to use the composite video output. I'm not a big fan of this, and I don't have the breakout plug for this, but oh well, beggars can't be choosers. I believe that at one point that was a Kensington lock port, however it's not labeled. On the back you will see that once again a lot of stuff has changed, although a lot of stuff has also remained the same. You're still stuck with one USB 1.1 port. You've got the PS2, the infrared, you've got the 15-pin D-sub or VGA depending on what you want to call it. You've got the dock port, which is a different dock port. This is slightly busticated, but oh well. Serial port, parallel port, and the port for the power brick. This one I had to fix because it suffered from aforementioned break free from the motherboard problem. And then finally, rounding this all out, is the cooling vent. It's no longer a tiny ass fan, it is just the vent, and it's actually a bigger fan. Although it's still a 40mm beast, which is not only loud, but also lasts 5 seconds before it starts sounding like a lawnmower. You still have the same 2 Type 2, 1 Type 3 PC MCIA card slots. In this one, I've got a Xircom 10100 real port card, although again, it holds no bearing in our comparison here. And you've also got, there's supposed to be a door here, and there was a door here. I've still got the door, but unfortunately it broke off. The port for the external floppy. This particular floppy drive will be much better matched to this system because it matches the case design. But that's just my opinion. You've got the power button here and the slide for that power button that prevents you from turning the system on while it's in a bag or something. Microphone and headphone, there is no line input from this system, and you've got the final speaker. There are not many differences between the 8100 and this 8200. You'll see that the battery still opens from the right. You've still got the, I believe the hard drive is still underneath this cover right here, although once again it's a little bit different. You do have a switch here that was not present on the 8100. This is for controlling the wireless hardware that was an option. This one does not have it, but it could very easily be added to it. Volume knob, of course, the reset switch, still in the same position. The power lights have been cleaned up a little bit, or the indicator lights, sorry, have been cleaned up a little bit, although they still look about the same, and they still indicate the same functions. And then on this side, if we take a look, you can see the speakers have been radically changed. They've been made smaller. They don't really sound as good, but that's alright. I don't really use the speakers on these anyways. This system's been outfitted with a DVD-ROM drive. It's still the same selectable bay, and it still uses the same latch on the bottom. And then you'll notice a definite difference. You'll see beside the modem is an Ethernet port. Yes, this actually has built-in Ethernet hardware. Now, it's only 100 megabit, but it's still built-in Ethernet hardware nonetheless, so you don't have to waste one or both of your PCMCIA card slots on an Ethernet card. You'll also see that Toshiba came to their senses and once again included a full composite video output port. And there's the Kensington lock on that side as well. The only difference on the back, apart from the fact that this isn't busticated, it is still the same connector though, is the fact that you've got two USB ports. I believe these may even be USB 2.0, but don't quote me on that. And on the last side, we've got the cooling vent. We've got the two Type 2, one Type 3 PCMCIA card slots. And you've actually got doors on these, so that's a difference. You've got the power switch and the lockout for the power switch. You've got the microphone and headphone and the final speaker. Notice something missing. That's right. There is no external floppy port on this system anywhere. Now, I'm sure that it's probably got one, or at least the docking station has got one. Or the docking station that was intended for the system has got one, but I don't have the docking station, and I can't find the port anywhere on this, so I'm just going to assume that it doesn't exist. So I guess you could say that unfortunately that would make this system partially a weenie modern computer. When we open up all these machines, you will see, once again, more of the same theme, radical differences between the 8000 and the 8100, and not too many differences between the 8100 and the 8200. I'm also going to take a look briefly at the Portagee, because it is slightly different from all of these. You can see, well, it's mostly just a combination of the 8000 and the 8100, although it's also got a few of its own design quirks as well. Still got the same track point, still got the same layout, however the keyboard lock indicators are in the screen bezel, and that right there is a microphone actually. See, the Portagee information is on the bezel there, and the logo is also right there. The screen is smaller, well, maybe it's not, I think it's actually the same size, or close to. It might be a 12-inch as opposed to the 13-inch. You'll see that the bezel on the 8000 also has a bevel appearance to it, which is a nice touch. But other than that, it's not too interesting, just a standard 13-inch panel. Maybe it's 14-inch, I'm not positive. Although it looks like it's 13 because it's smaller than my T42, and I know that my T42 is a 14-inch, so. Compare that, however, to the almost completely flat appearance of the 8100 and the 8200 over here. The 8200 also adds a bit of a bevel to the hinge area down here. One other really noticeable difference is the area above the keyboard. You'll see there's a Toshiba logo right there. There's the sleep switch, of course. That, I believe, is a microphone, but I could be wrong on that one. We've got the keyboard lock indicators, the Designed for Windows NT or Windows 98 sticker, Pentium 2 logo, and the Tecra 8000 ID badge. On the 8100, however, the ID badge is in the display bezel. The sleep switch is on the right as opposed to the left, and is also clear in color, well, I'm not sure why. And it's also got this little decorative piece which covers up the lock indicators and also keeps the keyboard inserted into the machine. You can also see, I'm wondering if there's supposed to be silver printing inside of this, because it's present here on the 8200. But I'm not sure if it's not supposed to be there or not. You can also see that this little decorative piece is different from the 8100 and the 8200, so you can't just swap these two between each other, because they are definitely different. The only real differences between the actual physical keyboards is the fact that the 8000 has a much more tactile keyboard to it, where keys that have a lot more travel than both the 8100 and the 8200, and also the presence of an extra Alt key on the edge of the Tecra 8100 and 8200 keyboards. The 8000 also lacks the two buttons at the top. I'm not sure what they do. I suppose they're probably click lock buttons. And also uses a different eraser nub, or nipple, I guess you could call that, than the 8100 and 8200 use. The 8000 uses a Pentium 2 processor. This particular one is clocked at 366 megahertz. Portagee also uses Pentium 2, and I believe it is also clocked at 366 megahertz, but the 8100 and 8200 use Pentium 3 processors. This is a Pentium 3 500, and this is a Pentium 3 8. I think it's an 850, or maybe it's an 866, I'm not positive. They all use the same types of RAM, although I've had issues with the 8200 in RAM in the past. In fact, I recently had to downgrade it back to 256 megabytes because it had some issues with the 512 meg upgrade I tried giving it. In terms of hard drives, the 8000 originally came with a 10 gigabyte hard drive that I still have, although I've got a different 10 gig drive in it now. The 8100 came with a 12 gig drive. It's got a 40 gig in it now. I'm thinking of changing that though. The 8200 has still got its original 10 gig drive in it. As previously mentioned, the 8000 is designed for Windows NT or Windows 98. This particular example is running Windows NT 4. The 8100 is designed for Windows 2000, or, well, it adds Windows 2000 to the roster of Microsoft OS designations. This one's running Windows XP, though, so that's not really advertised for. And the 8200 removes the Windows NT designation here. But I suppose that you could still run NT4 on this if you really wanted to. The last thing that I want to point out is the array of graphics chipsets that are used in these things, because they are all basically different. The Tecra 8000 and the Portage 7020 CT, at least I think these both. I know that this one uses the chip in question. I'm not sure about this. But they both use a Neomagic NM2200, or a Magic Media 256 AV, which is not as much of a pain to work with as you might think, but finding drivers are really difficult. I'm just glad that Toshiba keeps an archive of all their drivers for their systems, because Neomagic is long out of business. When we move over to the 8100, things get a little bit different. We have moved up from a Neomagic, a company that is no longer in business, to an S3, another company that is no longer in business, but this runs a Savage MX chip, which is not a bad chip per se, but it's, from what I've heard, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to work with, and under Linux at least, it really is a pain in the butt to work with. And when we move on to the 8200, things get even different still. I'm not quite sure exactly what chip this uses, but we're jumping from S3, an out-of-business company, to Trident, another out-of-business company. This, I believe the chip is called a Trident Cyberblade XP or something like that. I've noticed that my camera's really out of memory space here, so I better make this quick. That this has a decent scaler on it, this has a funky scaler on it, and this, I haven't even tested the scaling functionality on that. And that is pretty much going to do it for my video of these comparisons. Thank you for watching. If you've got any comments, definitely feel free to leave them down below. Any questions, if you want to see one of these running, feel free to shoot me a message as well. But until next time, this is CP666 signing off. Thank you for watching. Yes, I know, I disturbed your slumber. How horrible. If we take a look here, you will see there's a ribbed backing on this Tecra 8000, which actually matches up with the Portage 7020 CT's ribbed backing here, although it is a completely different material. This is a metal, whereas this is a plastic. And this rubber piece back here, ugh. Right off the bat, you'll notice how stunningly different the Tecra 8000 is from all of the other Tecras, or the other two. Right away, you will notice the stunning difference between the 8000 here and the 8200. I don't care if it takes me until eternity, I'm going to get this right. See? Even the cat's grown tired of my screwing up. I'm not going to include the Portage in the side-by-side or the comparison around the edges because there's really no point. One thing that you can think of is that the 8100 is a major increase in performance, and you can think of the 8200 as simply an upgraded version of the 8100. Now, that didn't make any sense. You will also see aforementioned stereo speakers in the grille. You will also see that the keyboard layout, well, it has radically changed. Sorry about that. I hope you all truly appreciate how difficult it is to keep a straight face when this thing is going on in the background. I'm not sure why that just happened, but it detected a face on the blanket. You'll see that on the... Oh, the focus is annoying me. And also the, that is so distracting. Yeah, you're on camera. What do you want? You see a modem, and another radical difference. You will see the cat wants to leave here, so I'm going to let him go. That the 8X00s have got. Focus, please. My camcorder is complaining that it's running out of memory card space, but oh well. The 8100. And finally, when we move on to the 8200, things get different still. We have jumped from... Let's see. However...